Imagine having exactly 120 seconds to decide if your living room is about to become your tomb.
Wow. Yeah,
Right, like you wake up in the pitch dark, there's an air raid siren blaring, you have 2 minutes before a ballistic missile, which is traveling down from the sky at terminal velocity, hits your zip code.
which is just, I mean, almost impossible to process when you're half asleep.
Exactly. And your phone tells you the closest bomb shelter is, say, a 3-minute walk away. So what do you do? Where do you even go?
It's an agonizing calculation,
Yeah.
and it fundamentally breaks how we understand physical security
Hmm.
because we're conditioned to think of taking shelter as this really simple binary concept.
Right, like inside versus outside.
Exactly. You're exposed and endangered on the outside, and you go indoors behind thick walls, and you are supposedly safe on the inside.
Right.
But when a major urban center faces modern, sustained aerial warfare, that binary just completely dissolves.
It totally falls apart.
Yeah. You find yourself navigating this incredibly complicated, terrifying gray area where, honestly, a roof over your head might actually be the thing that kills you.
Which is a horrifying thought. And that's exactly what we are taking a deep dive into today. We're looking at how that gray area actually operates on the ground.
Yeah, we've got some incredible source material today.
We do. We have this gripping, on-the-ground video report from the Kyiv Independent. The reporters went in to examine the stark physical reality of Kyiv's bomb shelter system. And just to put the timeline into perspective for everyone listening, this look is taking place roughly 4.5 years into the full-scale invasion.
Right, so this isn't the early chaos. This is entrenched reality.
Exactly. So today we are looking past the daily geopolitical headlines. Our mission is to really map out the brutal logistics of surviving modern warfare as a civilian. We're going to look at the intense friction between everyday life, aging city infrastructure, and that deadly 2-minute countdown.
The source material is just, well, it immediately reorients everything you assume about the built environment. It really forces you to ask a very uncomfortable question.
Which is,
If the walls and floors of your own house can no longer protect you, I mean, what actually can?
right, and that brings a really sharp focus to why public shelters have become the absolute center of gravity for these residents. Because their actual homes offer zero protection.
Yeah, the illusion of the home as a safe space is completely gone.
It is. The video report takes us to the Dernitsky district. It's a highly residential neighborhood filled with apartment blocks, families. But despite being overwhelmingly residential, it's actually one of the most frequently struck areas in the city.
Because there happens to be critical infrastructure situated nearby, right?
Exactly. And the video shows the aftermath of this massive attack that happened on July 6th. And the visual is staggering. A missile hit the lower part of a residential building, completely obliterating the first 4 floors. And it utterly collapsed the basement beneath it.
And that detail, the basement being crushed, that is honestly the most critical piece of information for understanding this whole environment.
Because we all think the basement is the safest place.
Exactly. In the civilian mindset, the basement is the bunker. It's the deepest point of the structure. It's, universally understood as the place you're told to go when things get dangerous.
Right.
But in this specific strike, 11 people died. And that destroyed basement was an officially recognized shelter on the city map.
Oh, wow. So they did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. The people who died were hiding exactly where the authorities told them to hide when the missile struck. And rescue crews still had to pull their bodies from, tons of crushed concrete.
It's just devastating. And I was thinking about this, we think of basements as safe because we're used to them protecting us from lateral threats.
Right, like weather.
Yeah, like the high winds of a tornado. If you live in a storm zone, you are totally conditioned to think underground equals safe. But a ballistic missile is a vertical threat.
Completely different physics.
Hiding under a standard residential building when a missile hits the roof is, it's basically like hiding under a collapsing bridge. Treating a normal basement like a bunker in this scenario is like trying to use a cardboard box as a steel vault.
That's a grim way to put it, but yeah, it's accurate. The floors above you literally become the weapon.
Right.
A standard basement might hide you from view, but structurally, it does absolutely nothing to stop the kinetic energy of a multi-ton building pancaking down on top of you.
Which means the psychological toll of that realization has to be immense.
Oh, it is. When the home is associated with panic and structural collapse instead of rest, the fundamental baseline of human comfort is just destroyed. The residents interviewed in the report speak to this so vividly.
Yeah, there was that one anecdote that really stuck with me.
The one about the bed.
Yes. One resident described being literally lifted up in their bed by the sheer force of a nearby explosion.
I mean, can you imagine?
No. They talked about running to the bathroom to hide, but fully admitting that sitting in a bathtub offers no actual safety.
Right, it's just an illusion of safety.
Exactly. And the resident explicitly states that when they go home, they don't even think about sleeping anymore. The daily routine just dissolves into this constant state of hypervigilance.
Because you're perpetually calculating your next move.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I need to pack tonight? How do I escape to a friend's house across town where the power grid might be quieter?
Right. Or should I try to reach a subway? Should I run to a public shelter?
Yeah, the home is no longer a sanctuary at all. It functions strictly as a staging ground for your next evacuation.
Okay, so if the designated basement of your residential building is a death trap, where do people actually go? Like, what does the city provide?
Well, they have to rethink what underground even means, and they rely on the city's broader infrastructure. According to the report, Kyiv has over 4,300 designated shelters.
Okay, that sounds like a lot.
Right. And in the Donetsky district alone, there are 591. Residents track the availability and location of these spaces on a specialized government app.
Right, the app.
But the video reveals that the physical conditions and the actual survivability of these places, they just vary wildly.
Yeah, the contrast the reporters show is fascinating. They take us into what you could almost describe as, like, a bougie residential shelter.
Yeah, the parking garage.
Right. It's a modern underground parking garage. It's maybe 10 steps down from the street level, barely 2 meters underground.
Very shallow.
Super shallow. But it has automatic doors that sync up to open when the air raid siren goes off. There are benches to sit on. It's clean, but it has very low ceilings and all these exposed cables and plumbing pipes running everywhere overhead.
And then you contrast that modern convenience with another shelter they visit nearby, which is a proper, deep Soviet-era bunker.
It looks completely different.
Totally. And the architectural history here is vital. These bunkers were built during the Cold War with the explicit threat of nuclear fallout in mind. So the Soviet architectural doctrine prioritized deep, entrenched survival.
Right, they were expecting the worst.
Exactly. The reporter describes the vibe down there as eerie, almost reminiscent of a Chernobyl facility. It is far deeper underground than the parking garage. There were sleeping cots laid out, heavy water reserves stashed away, rows of chairs.
And there was that sign, right?
Yeah, there's a prominent sign on the wall urging Ukrainians to be polite, to respect one another, and to help each other in these terrible times. It is a heavy institutional environment built for a sustained siege.
Okay, but this is what I don't get. The government app is treating all of these underground spaces equally, right?
Essentially, yes.
It puts a pin on the map for the shallow parking garage and a pin on the map for the deep Soviet nuclear bunker. But wait, if the app officially designates it as a shelter, how can finding a safe one still be a total gamble for someone living there?
Because a weapon falling from the sky doesn't care about a digital pin on an app.
Wow.
If the app tells you to go to a specific meeting, it feels like it should be guaranteeing your safety. But that shallow garage essentially acts as a shrapnel shield, at best. It completely ignores the vertical velocity of something massive.
So the app doesn't account for the type of weapon.
Exactly. This is where the brutal physics of the conflict override the technology of the smartphone app. The app tells you where a designated structure is located, but it cannot guarantee the structure can withstand the specific type of munition falling that night.
Right.
Let's look at the mechanics of the weapons, the source details. If this city is attacked by Shahed drones,
Which happen constantly.
These are relatively slow-moving, loitering munitions. They act like flying bombs with a smaller explosive yield. So against those, that shallow 2-meter-deep parking lot shelter might actually protect civilians from the immediate blast waves and the lateral shrapnel.
Because it gets you out of the immediate line of sight.
Exactly. But if the strike is from a ballistic missile, the physics change entirely.
Because they're coming straight down.
Right. A ballistic missile travels in a high suborbital arc and comes down on its target at terminal velocity. It carries a much larger payload and impacts with incredible kinetic energy.
Which is terrifying.
Against that kind of force, a 2-meter-deep parking garage with exposed pipes is completely useless. The roof would simply cave in, mirroring the tragedy of the residential basement we discussed earlier.
Oh, wow. So you're basically trapped.
Yeah, the app can point you toward an underground space, but it cannot alter the architectural reality of what that specific space can physically survive.
Okay, so having a theoretically safe, deep Cold War bunker nearby is amazing, but it's completely irrelevant if you can't physically reach it before the impact.
That is the deadliest part of this whole equation.
Right. We move from the structures themselves to the terrifying logistics of the commute, because the commute dictates who lives and who dies. The source notes that ballistic missiles can reach Kyiv in just 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I mean, 2 minutes from launch to impact leaves a vanishingly small window for human reaction.
You barely have time to get out of bed.
Exactly. Because by the time the radar detects the launch, the system processes the trajectory, the sirens are triggered, and you wake up to hear them. You are dealing with a fraction of that time.
Wow.
You are operating in a reality of bare moments.
And it creates a geography of survival that is incredibly uneven. The reporters demonstrate this on camera. They simply walk down the street.
Yeah, it was such a stark demonstration.
They walk for 3 minutes outside of their immediate starting point, and suddenly, the map on the shelter app changes completely.
Yep.
Instead of multiple shelter options, the digital map shows only 2. And to make matters worse, those 2 shelters are located in educational facilities.
Which means they're only open for students during the day.
Exactly. So if a ballistic launch happens at night and you are staring at your phone in a panic, a 3-minute walk has entirely eliminated your option.
It forces people to look for larger systemic infrastructure. Which is why the conversation always turns to the metro stations.
Oh, right, because that's the iconic image everyone has, isn't it? Hundreds of families sheltering safely deep down in the subway stations, sleeping on the platforms.
Yes, but the reality on the ground in the Darnitsky district shatters that image entirely.
How so?
Well, in this highly populated area, the neighborhood is wedged between 2 different metro lines. But both of them are a 30-minute walk away from the residential center.
Okay, and if you only have a 120-second warning, a 30-minute walk is quite literally an impossibility.
Exactly. And even if residents could somehow, magically teleport to those stations, the source notes that each line presents a different set of structural failures.
What's wrong with them?
One of the metro lines in that area is entirely too shallow. The blast wave of a heavy strike would propagate right through the street level and into the tunnels.
Oh, wow.
And the other line actually runs above ground in that specific section, making it completely useless as a bomb shelter against aerial threats.
So the metro is just off the table entirely for these residents.
Pretty much.
Which leaves them scrambling in the dark. And that leads to, honestly, the most agonizing scene in the video report.
The street crossing.
Right. The reporters visit a street crossing where 5 people were killed by a missile impact. You can see this massive crater in the ground on the video. And these people died just meters away from a shelter door.
Just meters.
The entrance is barely marked. There is a small sign that says, "Safe House Enter," next to some dark stairs leading underground. They were caught in the open trying to navigate their own neighborhood.
It's horrific.
Think about your own neighborhood for a second. Just imagine you have exactly 120 seconds to wake up, grab your family, and run down the street in the pitch dark to safety. Now imagine a 5-minute walk is literally a death sentence. The math simply does not work.
It really highlights a critical systemic failure. Survival in this environment no longer comes down to how well you've prepared your emergency go bag or, how closely you monitor the official telegram channels.
Yeah.
It comes down entirely to physical proximity. If you do not live immediately adjacent to a structurally sound, deeply entrenched bunker, your chances of surviving a direct strike are vanishingly small.
And that grim reality brings us to the most systemic question of this entire deep dive. If people are dying meters from poorly marked doors and designated basements are collapsing on the people told to hide in them, why hasn't this been fixed?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, we are looking at conditions 4.5 years into a full-scale invasion. You would think the shelter system would be an oiled machine by now.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But the lack of progress is born from a collision between military reality and, quite frankly, severe administrative dysfunction.
Okay, break that down for us.
On the military side, the report outlines a severe intensification of Russian aerial attacks. The volume of weapons being fired at the city is higher than ever.
Right.
Simultaneously, Ukraine is facing a critical shortage of air defense interceptors provided by its allies. So the shield in the sky has massive gaps, meaning more drones and missiles are getting through the defensive net.
Which places extreme, unprecedented pressure on the physical infrastructure on the ground.
Exactly. And that ground infrastructure is failing because it is caught in an absolute bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah, the source goes into how The political responsibility for these shelters is just highly fractured.
It's a mess.
It's not managed by a single unified emergency agency. The responsibility is chopped up and divided among Kyiv's city authorities, the various district authorities, the local military administrations, and private owners' organizations who manage individual residential and commercial buildings.
And the mechanism of that bureaucratic failure is what actually kills people.
How so? Give me an example.
Consider a very practical scenario implied by the source. Let's say there's a deep, safe basement owned by a private commercial building manager.
Sure.
That private owner locks the basement doors at night because they don't want vandalism, or maybe they're storing equipment down there.
Right, which makes sense for a business.
Sure. But the city government mandates that all shelters must remain open and accessible 24/7 for air raids.
Okay, so someone has to enforce that.
Right, but who?
Yeah.
The military administration says it's the city's job to enforce that rule. The city says it doesn't have the manpower to police private landlords.
So when the air raid siren sounds at 2:00 a.m. and you run to that building with your 2-minute warning ticking down, who physically holds the key?
Nobody. The private owner is asleep across town. The city official isn't there. The military isn't there. You are standing outside a locked door while a missile comes down.
That is just, wow, it's textbook institutional paralysis.
He really is. When responsibility is divided among too many different administrative layers,
Yeah.
the practical result is that no one is actually accountable.
Right. So when a shelter is found to be flooded or filled with trash or padlocked during an attack, all of these different groups simply point fingers at each other.
Exactly. No one wants to take the political or legal responsibility for a broken system.
But there is a deep engineering paradox at play here too, right? Which makes solving this incredibly difficult. You can't just mandate that better, deeper bunkers be built tomorrow.
No, you can't. Retrofitting a dense pre-existing urban neighborhood to withstand modern ballistic warfare is a massive engineering paradox.
You can't just dig up a whole city block.
Exactly. You cannot simply dig a 20-meter deep, concrete reinforced Cold War-style bunker underneath an already built, heavily populated high-rise without risking the structural integrity of the entire block.
Right, the buildings above it would collapse.
Yes. The city is trapped by its own existing geography and architecture, so they are trying to apply digital band-aids, like the Shelter app, over a massive physical infrastructural deficit.
And there's this cruel irony here, specifically in the Darnitsky district. It's overwhelmingly residential, filled with families, yet it is heavily targeted because critical power and industrial infrastructure is located nearby.
Right.
The critical infrastructure draws the incoming fire to the neighborhood, yet the civilian infrastructure meant to protect the families living around it is trapped in red tape and engineering impossibilities.
It's tragic. The source paints a picture where, despite all the apps, the digital maps, and the official government designations, a civilian's survival ultimately comes down to pure luck.
Just luck.
Were you in a building with a deep enough foundation? Was the incoming weapon a drone or a ballistic missile? Did the private landlord remember to unlock the steel door that night?
Wow.
For a modern, organized society under siege, relying on pure luck is an unacceptable reality, yet it is exactly the burden civilians are forced to carry every single night.
It is a heavy, heavy reality to process, and it entirely shifts how you view the structures around you.
It really does.
Over the course of today's deep dive, we've traced the complete collapse of a fundamental human expectation, the illusion of the home as a safe space. We examine the terrifying math of a 2-minute ballistic warning, where a 3-minute walk dictates whether you find cover or find yourself caught in the open. We explored the vast differences in shelter survivability, from shallow, modern parking garages that offer no protection against vertical kinetic strikes, to deep Soviet bunkers built for a completely different era of warfare.
It's a vast spectrum.
And we mapped out how a fatal combination of fractured bureaucracy and architectural limitations has left residents relying on chance.
The realities documented in this report, they leave us with a really profound question regarding the future of global urban planning.
Oh, absolutely.
If modern ballistic warfare dictates that a major urban center only has a 120-second warning of an incoming strike from the upper atmosphere, how must architecture fundamentally change moving forward?
Right.
If citizens can no longer rely on having the time to run to a distant centralized bunker or a subway station, does every new residential building in every modern city everywhere suddenly need to be built like a fortress from the inside out?
It really makes you wonder what the baseline of civilian construction will look like 50 years from now. It's a stark reminder of how easily we take our daily physical security for granted and how quickly those concrete systems fracture under the sustained pressure of modern conflict. The next time you walk through your front door and turn that deadbolt, take a look around at the walls that surround you and think about what it really takes to make a space safe.